These resources have been developed with instructors in mind. We're providing videos of activities being done, curriculum of how to lead them, the materials and handouts you would need to give to students so that you can be successful in using activities that are based in inclusive teaching.
In preparation, you will find a resource on our website that gives full definitions and explanations of all social identity terms. It will be helpful to be familiar with these terms before conducting the activity. Part of preparing as an instructor is doing our own identity work. That means becoming comfortable with terms and also continuing to develop our own self-awareness and understanding the impact of our own identities. It is not realistic to think we will know everything about identity prior to going into a facilitator setting, but committing to an ongoing process is an essential part of engaging in inclusive teaching.
We invite you to check out our website for a range of other resources. You'll see other videos of activities, as well as other resources on how to have inclusive teaching pedagogy.
This video illustrates 3 exercises: the personal identity wheel, the social identity wheel, and the spectrum activity. All 3 exercises help students understand their personal and social identities. The students represented in this video participated as volunteers in a simulated classroom setting.
And you'll notice in the video that the demographic of the students is maybe atypical for a classroom. And you might find that it represents a diversity that's different from what you have in your classroom.
It is important to have some activities for students to get to know each other in advance of these activities, given the level of sharing that they will provide. The goals of these exercises are to help students understand differences between personal and social identities, and to get to know classmates both as individuals and as members of groups, and to think about why belonging to groups matter and has consequences in interactions with others. Additionally, these exercises help students build perspective-taking, ideally empathy, for classmates by knowing more about their peers, and can help build relations amongst students through personal sharing to improve teamwork. Be sure to understand your specific classroom goals and share them with the students. There are many reasons an instructor might choose to do these exercises. These exercises, the personal identity wheel, the social identity wheel, and spectrum activity, can be used separately, though I recommend bringing them together to help make the strongest points. These exercises can help in all disciplinary classrooms, especially when students will be expected to work in groups and teams, or when they might utilize their tacit knowledge or personal experiences to link to class content. These exercises help students get to know one another and also set the framework for appropriate personal sharing in the classroom. They also seem to yield higher level of sharing from quieter students who begin to feel more comfortable in the safe environment for sharing. Finally, these exercises help students identify trends and patterns across groups, which might help instructors anticipate future dynamics related to what the group is naturally sensitive about, what students know or understand, which may affect decisions about readings, discussion, or preparation for class topics. Also, there is a lot of personal sharing during this session. We encourage you to create guidelines for participation during one of your first class sessions and remind students about that as they prepare to participate in class. If you haven't established those community norms, then take some time at the beginning of this session to do so. These are the materials you will need for these activities: the personal identity wheel handouts, the social identity wheel handouts, and the identity group signs around the room and tape to hang the signs. The room is typically set up with chairs in a circle, and students will need to be able to move around the room at different points in the session, so most room setups are okay, as long as they can do that easily. The personal identity wheel is a worksheet that asks students to consider various aspects of who they are. It includes questions like favorite food, number of siblings, hidden talents, and is a relatively low-risk way of encouraging some reflection and sharing. Students first fill this out for themselves, and then might share with a partner, small groups, and then in a bigger group setting if interested. For example, it might be fun to ask some students to share hidden talents with a big group. In the debriefing, one can ask if it was easy or hard to fill out the worksheet out, if it was easy or hard to share this information with other people. All of this helps students both understand personal identity as well as provide a comparison for exploring social identity. This exercise can be debriefed in a variety of ways. For example, students could gather in groups of 4. They could also stand and gather with 2 to 3 people for 1 minute and then move on to another group for another minute or 2. You could do several rounds of this. This speed sharing approach maximizes the number of people who are introduced to one another. One could also do a full group debrief by asking questions such as, what was the hardest prompt to answer and why? Would anyone like to share their favorite food, music, etc.? This is a great icebreaker activity too. As an instructor, this is a good way to connect with students, so consider sharing some of your favorites with them as well. The amount of time dictates how much sharing is done for each wheel. Sometimes the personal identity wheel is filled out and you move on. Sometimes it is shared with others. The social identity handout available at our website includes a definition of social identities and then also lists many examples of how people might identify. The social identity wheel on the back of the page is a different way for our students to reflect on other aspects of who they are. These aspects are uniquely different from the questions on the personal identity wheel and include questions about one's race, gender, social class, religion, etc., including some questions about which of these identities they think most or least about. Just as they did with the personal identity wheel, students first fill this out, then might share elements of it with 1 or 2 peers, and then is debriefed in a large group. When getting students into groups of 2 or 3 to share, it is important to ask them to only speak to the questions in the middle of the wheel, which include which identities they think most and least about. This is to avoid students feeling the need to out themselves in different ways and rather to allow the students to self-disclose at their own pace. When you debrief this wheel in the big group, it can be interesting to both explore students' experience filling out and sharing this wheel and to compare it to the experience they had filling out and sharing the personal identity wheel. Be sure to understand all terms on the sheet so you're prepared to answer questions from students. For example, Jewish identity is listed as both a religion and an ethnicity. Students frequently ask clarification about that. Similarly, terms representing gender fluidity, such as genderqueer, are often newer to us as instructors than to students. So it's important for us to know the definition and be able to respond if students ask. Additionally, think about what you would like to share with your students. They're curious about you too. Think about what you feel comfortable telling about yourself. It is important to do our own work around identities as instructors, so we're ready to respond to students' questions.
I consider myself biracial because I'm half African American and I'm half Mexican. So I'm a little of both. So when I put biracial, it leaves like a blank space where people don't know exactly what two I am.
And like being lower class or middle class, and your social economic class is like different depending on where you are.
Since I've entered college, I've had like a identity confusion to where I've never considered myself to be African American. I often got angry when people even called me African American because you don't know what a person's roots even are. So you can't look at me and just tell me that I'm African American when I don't know if my ancestors are African at all.
It's so weird because every time it's the same questions that I linger longer on, and every single time it's like I have different considerations, and it's just because of my personal experiences.
Once you debrief the social identity wheel activity, you will move on to the spectrum activity. You will need to prepare a set of questions or statements, and students will select one of the social identities you have posted in the room that they feel best answers the prompt. So what part of your identity do you think people first notice about you? Your questions may vary depending on what topics you would like to focus on for the level of sharing in the room. Instructors can always add questions after every share out for clarification or reflection. There are different ways to debrief the spectrum activity. For instance, students can answer the question or prompt and then walk around the room choosing one of the social identities. So Which of your identities have the strongest effect on how you see yourself as a U of M student? You can then decide to do a large group share out, or you can choose to do small group sharing instead. Some students might be more comfortable sharing in small group scenarios, while other students might be more comfortable in large group settings.
Understanding that I can't separate my gender and my skin color and my ethnicities into 3 separate compartments like there is here. It's not as neat as that. And so with me, I think like a lot of people brought up, spaces and the demographics within the spaces and the people within the spaces, and I think that's something that's very important to me, or that's very salient to me in my identities, because depending on who's in the room, that's how I interact, and that's how I come into myself. So I think that was something that was really important to me.
Walking into a lecture hall as a freshman, and seeing the sea of Mac books around me, really taking in the fact that everyone was at a different level than I was, that really made me zoom out and examine my experience as a whole and just think about, why is that different, and what are the reasons that my family, has had such a different experience than your family?
One point to note at the very end is that the personal identity wheel helped us to get to know each other as individuals, which is very important. The social identity wheel and spectrum exercise helped us to see that the groups we belong to are also important in our lives. If we think we're interacting as individuals but are consciously or unconsciously stereotyping someone based on their group memberships, then our work is less productive. When we are aware of the dynamics of both, who we are as individuals and as members of groups, we can work most effectively together. To help you in utilizing these activities in your classroom, we have included some sample spectrum questions on our website. Feel free to select which questions work best for your class, and of course to edit and add additional questions as you desire. Let us know how it goes.